All right, so forgive me for talking so much. This is fun for me, but I wanted to put in a little. Dude, why does it keeps let me know your preference? Okay, it doesn't want to screw up the whole thing for me. I'll read that later. Um, you've noticed it's made some errors, right? I told you it primarily uses the same tool set that you and I would use to navigate through these systems as navigating through the browser visually, with some backend uh, confirmations and stuff. But that's not entirely true. Actually, throughout this whole process, it has written itself two separate, at least two, that I've seen Python scripts. So it does write code in the background to do certain things, right? If it has formalized a process and knows it's going to work, it can specify it in code, run it right there in the browser. And that's how I'll tell you, once it masters this process, once it gets through the first 10, right? Maybe whatever with a perfect process, once it's mapped it out completely, then the code will do the rest, right? The code is it speeds it up. Okay. Once the logic is perfect and it's been tested, code is the appropriate way to do it. So think about like what zappysys does. This whole database, the all of Odoo is based on the SQL database, Postgres SQL, yeah, whatever it's called. So so it can be queried. You can just open up a command terminal here, and you can just query the database directly, add and update records directly. If you know the exact specification, that has to be discerned or derived from natural language instructions, right? What we're doing here is sort of painting the picture of the final sort of logical golden path. We're using words to paint, to draw, the something that looks very much like the logical structure. And then when there's no other outcomes left except, this is the correct query that maps to everything we're talking about, whatever. So it uses some math and stuff to figure that stuff out. But my point is that it starts non-specific and indeterministic, right? Outcomes are not deterministic when you're using natural language, and then it moves toward a deterministic uh, path where the outcome is given, it's certain. And Zappy creates a very robust set of tooling that allow basically Zappy it's so much more configurable than an N8N workflow. You can make N8N as configurable as Zappy. You can just drop a code node, in here, and you can just have a bunch of nodes that are nothing but pure code. That's pretty granular, So you can make it that way, but Zappy has every conceivable, variation of anything you could want to do configurable within its interface, right? So it has a much vaster vocabulary that it can use to map to the human, whatever, the human instructions, right? And it can get very, very specific at the get-go. And for each of the tasks and apps and ways that it can bro, you know what I'm trying to say. I'm just using way too many words, but exactly the agents lack is that it's like last mile problem for shipment delivery problems. It's like it's hard to find the exact address even when you're on the road and right in front of the house, and you might still not know which mailbox to go to. You know, um, and it becomes costly. So all the problems that happen at the very end. It's like 99% of the problems, you know, or some big amount. But the correct tooling creates a perfect, creates a much more robust, much more reliable map to the final thing. That's why zappysys is cool, in my opinion, and that's why I think Zappy shell, the CLI, it needs to be built out for the whole product suite, really, because then this thing will use it. It doesn't need to use the interface. It only needs to use the interface until it's certain of what you're asking it to do, and then it can just write the query. Anyways, I think it would be very reliable. Zappysys could create an extremely cool set of tooling for the sort of last mile problem that agents have. In fact, I think that's what Zappysys will do. I think that's what it is because that look at what the agent is doing. It's literally doing everything I do. Yeah. Anyways, I'm done. I'm too tired.